Troy Conrad. Hello. So you're most well known for Comedy Jesus show. You were George Bush on your last thing, and also the town hall.
Yeah, Angry Town Hall.
Angry Town Hall. And so you're most well known for satire. Do you think that it's the most powerful form of stand-up?
Is satire the most powerful form? Let's see. I think satire is the most powerful form of comedy, period, whether it comes in a stand-up form or a print form or a socially conscious prank form. I think all that kind of stuff, like for instance, the Yes Men have been really influential on me. That kind of, that's satire being put to use, it's satire in action. And all it can do is sort of expose things that we don't normally see. Satire gets through different layers of our brains to where if you just said that stuff directly without the satire, it'd just be, nobody would want to hear it.
Yeah. So part of satire, I guess it's necessary that you have to offend people. Do you think that's true?
It's not necessary at all to offend people, but it is, I think, a result of satire is always that it does provoke something in people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to be offensive. It just needs to be provocative in the way that when they are exposed to it, it hits the brain a little bit harder and makes them either go, "What the hell, is this real?" or just laugh hysterically if they get it right away, and it gives them an extra layer of a message that they wouldn't get.
So what's the overall impact that you want to have on an audience?
For me, the impact I want to have on an audience is to get them thinking in ways they haven't been thought before. I always think of it in terms of evolution. I want to be an agent of evolution. And if I can do that, if I can, just like I appreciate it when, like for instance, when somebody calls you out on something, like someone calls you out on bullshit, like, hey, you did this, you're cheating on it. Like as a comic, you go, hey, that was too easy of a joke. Someone will, give each other notes. That's a way of helping someone else evolve. Satire does that too, and it does it almost in a forceful way, but in the best, most gentle, forceful way, because it's wrapped in a wonderful package of humor.
Yeah. How did it affect you specifically? Like who influenced you to do it?
Okay, well, when I got into my satire stuff, I would say The Onion and the Yes Men were extremely influential. And Rick Overton, this is early on, like pre-Jesus. This is BC, I would say Rick Overton, I would say those three, The Onion, the Yes Men, and Rick Overton, because those three have operating brains that just naturally work with satire.
Do you think your satire would work if you didn't have the character aspect of it? Would you still be able to do it as yourself?
No, not really. I did one of the characters I did sort of as myself. I used my name so people could look it up and find out it was a joke, because I played it really serious to where people would take it seriously. But that made them, I'm doing something, I'm provoking them enough. When they think it's totally real, I'm provoking them enough to where they have to look it up. But I was still playing a character, like all the personality traits were different. I don't think satire works unless you've got an angle of a character in some way. I mean, I don't think there's a way. Yeah, or else then it's not satire.
Do you think that stand-up has to affect the audience's thoughts and their belief system in order for it to be successful?
For stand-up to be successful, it does not have to influence the audience or change them, or maybe even it doesn't even have to provoke them. In my opinion, what my measure of success would be. I don't think it should be that for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people, some people just want to go out and laugh. People that like are just busting their ass working the 9-to-5 job and barely have any time. Sometimes I understand why they might want to see a ridiculous, stupid puppet just on somebody's shoulder talking. It appalls me, but I understand it because sometimes people just want to laugh and be silly. See Carrot Top pulling props out of a bucket. I get that, and sometimes I'm in that mood too. But for me, I've got to provoke.
So laughter's like the secondary part of what you want.
For me, and for most of the comics that I watch and that I know, that is, I think that the comedy is a priority, but it has to be wrapped in a priority package of satire in order to sort of say something. I mean, I want to say something, and I think every comic wants to say something. Sometimes we relax and rely on the easy laughs, though.
Who were those early comics that made you want to, instead of just making people laugh, you wanted to show them your points and what you thought about?
The early comics that really made me laugh, I mean, what's interesting, I would say George Carlin, because he actually always had a message, and God, there were so many early on. I'm trying to think of like really early days. Comic Stephen Wright, who I don't know if you know yet, he's in the UK. He was influential, and all these guys, by the way, it took me a while to absorb into them. I didn't automatically like any of the great comics I like now. Like when I was a kid, I listened to it, and then I didn't get it, and then I listened to it again, and I went, okay, this is amazing. And that goes for Carlin, Stephen Wright, other influences. Paul Reiser was a guy I liked a lot. He ended up doing sitcoms and stuff later, but I always liked his stand-up. And and later on, certainly Rick Overton was another huge influence because he's just a stream of consciousness, truth teller with this like gift of making everything into metaphors that he was a huge influence. Like he actually changed the software in my brain,
So do you think that comedy is a necessary part of society?
It's comedy is not only a necessary part of society. Without it, a society wouldn't flourish, and we can easily see an example of that if you look at the cultures that don't have comedy as a value that is respected, revered, appreciated. I would say that the more developed a society is, the more they appreciate comedy. And the more miserable a society is, the more they need comedy. But for instance, in the Middle East, there's lots of comedy, but there's also a sort of unofficial ban on comedy because it's seen as a form of violence. If you look at all the language used within stand-up comedy, it's all violence. It's the best form of violence we could ever, as humans, evolve to. There's punchlines, there's tags, there's hits. When you do well, you killed, you slayed, you destroyed. Everything relates to violence because humor actually is a form of violence, the best possible one. Nobody gets hurt except occasionally someone's ego. And this is one of my influences, a guy named Howard Bloom, who's like one of the world's top scientists, and he talks about this, that when we get to that point, when we all kill each other around the world and go to war, it's all in the realm of humor and satire and comedy. Because that way everyone gets to live, but you still get to fight it out and use your fighting DNA, which no one can avoid. So, does that answer?
Yeah, I think that answers it.
I don't even remember the question.
Just to finish, do you think then, because you have the freedom to say what you want and comedy is an integral part of where you live, do you think there's any boundaries that you shouldn't cross? Any lines that you shouldn't go?
As far as if there should be lines that shouldn't be crossed in comedy, when when those lines are not able to be crossed, that's where cancer grows. That's societal cancer. Anything that can't be talked about. I mean, that's why, again, bring it back to like, in Islamic cultures, the more extreme they are, like Pakistan, for instance, there's a huge ban on, there's no humor allowed on almost any topic, not just religion, but also society, because it is still seen as a much more real form of violence instead of a sort of artificial form of violence. So they read anything that's sarcastic or satirical about the Prophet or the Quran as a direct attack, as if you came at them with a knife, at their culture, like literally physically attacking them. So that's a dangerous thing, and that keeps society from evolving. That's why it's not as evolved. Here, we evolve well because we get past things. We leap forward through the humor. And that's really heavy. This is like super serious. Again, this is like the Charlie Rose style interview. But I hope that answers everything.
Yeah, I think that did. Thank you.
Prevents.